Welcome to another episode of the Phase Dollars Podcast. And if you're a leader, entrepreneur, and/or business owner who struggle with exposure, this video is going to help you gain the exposure that you are looking for. So make sure you got your pen, get your notebook, because we're talking about exposure. We're talking about business, and we're talking about growing into a business. So one thing that I recently discovered, okay, is that one, let me know in the comments if y'all can hear me. Let me know if y'all can hear me. Shoot me a thumbs up if y'all can hear me. One thing that I recently discovered is that I really enjoy learning about business, talking about business, doing business, and really positioning myself as a business owner. And what I learned is that one, that a lot of people don't have the access that I have to a lot of information. And let me know in the comments if y'all can hear me, to a lot of information and or, just the understanding, level of understanding that I have today. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to upgrade my content, my profile, to have it focused around business, to help leaders gain more exposure and to understand the importance behind the exposure that they're getting. And so this is going to help me, because this right here is the announcement that I'm improving my business, or what is it, that I'm growing into a business. And as I'm growing into a business, I have to start like communicating about the business language, about marketing. Marketing is putting yourself out there. Sales is about communicating with people and then actually getting revenue to come in. And so we're going to make it simple. My goal is to make business simple for those of you who are interested in getting into business, have been in business, and or have some idea or thought process that one day you will get into business. When you come to my page, you're going to hear a lot about business. You're going to hear a lot about exposure. You're going to hear a lot about information that goes on with the business that you can start doing today. Disclaimer. Where's my phone at? Hold on. I got to read the disclaimer. Hold on. This channel is for educational purposes only. Hold on. Where did it go? See, this is something new. Disclaimer, this content is for educational and commentary purposes. Any third-party references are used under fair use for analysis, critique, and transformation. All rights belong to their respective owners. So I gotta get used to reading the disclaimer, so that way, as the disclaimer is read, like I'm, like I'm operating as a business. Okay. So, thank you, darling. So what we gonna talk about? Okay. Why did I come to this conclusion? Why did I come to this thought process? It's called an epiphany, when you just have random thoughts appear to you and like randomly. It's the fact that I start seeing a lot of different things. And as I get more experience in business and have more education around business, I start to see things that start to make a lot of sense. And what this does is that it's helping me understand business. It's helping me understand the information that I thought I didn't have, or that was overwhelming and that was stressful. And I'm like, man, one day I'm going to understand it. And so when I start to learn about it, I'm like, ooh, this is different. Ooh, this information over here is like really critical for me to learn, because it's not just a media bit. It's not just about me posting content online, putting myself out there. It's more than that. It's bigger than that. It's about business. AI said when he was practicing, he said, we talking about practice? Yes, we're talking about business. So that's what helped me get to this conclusion, where I'm like, well, I enjoy talking about business, learning about business, watching business, and seeing how people do things. And I've talked to a lot of successful people. I'm just asking, like, I'm curious around the journey, and I'm always wondering, like, how did they get from point A, which is not having a business, to point B, which is having a business. And it's a process, it's a journey, it's a discovery. So if you're a leader, entrepreneur, and a business owner that want to discover business, this channel is going to be primarily around business. Why? Because I enjoy it. Why? Because I'm doing business. Why? Because it's important to learn business. So I'm just really like getting to the level of like I don't know what it's called, level of comfortability, I'm assuming is what it's called, where I can talk about things that I'm doing. Yes, I'm not as successful as Elon Musk. Yes, I'm not as successful as Barack Obama, but that's okay. I don't have to be successful as all these different people. What I do have to be is consistent. This channel is going to focus around consistency. How can you be consistent for yourself to gain the exposure that you're looking for? What happens many times in life is that what I recognize is that I didn't even know that consistency was an important factor to be in business. It's not the fact that you're not consistent enough. It's just that you're not showing up every single day. The reason why that's important for you to be in business, you have to grow into a business. You have to become a business, and you have to learn the information, the knowledge, the technicality behind it. So for this channel, we're going to keep it simple. For Failures Knowledge Podcast, we're going to keep it simple. And this is a new format, new way that I'm going to deliver the content because I enjoy business. I'm not just coming up here just to talk, just to be talking. I mean, I was a couple years ago. See, here's the thing about development. When you grow, you start to understand everything that you're doing. And it was like, well, since I'm growing, I understand more. I want to talk about business. I want to educate new leaders who's getting into entrepreneurship about business. I want to mentor mentees who are entrepreneurs who have that drive, that ambition to get into entrepreneurship. I want to show them, well, hey, these are the steps that you get there. Based off my experience, based off the education that I have, it's really just taking it step by step by step by step. Why? Because we talking about business. Let me know in the comments if you agree with what I'm saying. We talking about business. Make sure you emphasize the business. Why? Because the business is everything. Everyone that's doing a particular skill, there's some form of business there. And when I start to recognize that, I'm like, man, like, how come like a lot of people got all these different, like all these people got all these big fans, and why are they fans? And I start to watch Keith Lee. I start to watch Mr. Beast. I start to watch Speed. I start to watch Simone Biles and around her documentary, Venus Williams, and like all these people got a big fan base. Why do they have a fan base? Well, before they was known, they had to do the work by themselves. Let me know in the comments. Do the work by yourself. Entertainment is a business. Football, basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer, tennis, golf, what else? Pucketball. Everything, every form of entertainment is a business. And when I start to look at it, I'm like, wait, hold on. How do you grow into a business? How do you grow to become a business? How do you grow just in general? You see, when I start to learn about business became simple. It became simple because I learned how to break it down and ask the questions to the people who were already in business. If I want to get in business, I got to get around people that's doing business. Why? Because I've never been in business. I have to get around those who's doing business. Come on now. Let me know in the comments if you say you got to get around people that's doing business. Why? Because you got to learn the fundamentals of having a business. And there's so many different things that goes on with it, but my focus is going to be understanding exposure. Why should you focus on exposure? Why should you get more attention? And why and how does that help your business? And so when I started to understand that, wait, I'm in the media business, like I'm in the social media business, the content creation business. I'm not just doing things just to do it. Like, absolutely not. Like, there's a goal behind it, but I had to discover what the goal actually even consisted of. Why? Because I had to understand, I had to learn what business I was in. Everyone is in the business, people. In the business, it's in the business of people. Yeah, it's called people business. People business. Everybody that has a business is in a people business. Why? Because there's people that make decisions. There are people that you have to work with. There are people who are your customers. When I start to understand everything that's on this planet is a form of business, I start to look at things differently. These books is right behind me. That's a business. Why? Because it's helped people gain more exposure through reading. There's some people who don't pick up a book. There's some people who don't read at all. There's some people who will listen to the book. But the book is a form of exposure. You have to be exposed to new information to recognize that you are gaining the new knowledge for yourself. Why is it important? Why is it important? You see, it's important because everything is business. Everything is business. There's this guy that's going around. And he did a documentary, or not necessarily a documentary, but he went around to Montana, and he was like, man, these kids, these not kids, but it was like a fraudulent case where business owners were claiming that they had business, but they didn't. And so this guy, he was documenting the process. He literally took his phone, he literally grabbed the microphone, and he started recording and putting himself out there even more. This one video has over 100 million views. That's 100 million people who has watched this video. Let me know in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. There's 100 million people who has watched this one video. Why is that important? Because exposure comes in different forms, different ways, different strategies. But until you take that risk for the exposure for yourself, nobody would ever know what you're doing. And it taught me everything is about business. And it was a one part in the scene or in the video, and somebody asked, and I was like, so who you with? He said, I'm not with nobody. I'm just with myself. Like, it's me. I have the YouTube channel. I'm not with nobody. I'm not with no major company, no major media company. I'm just with myself. When he said that, I recognized it was a business. Although he's been probably doing it for fun, which there's nothing wrong with that, but understanding that when you gain the exposure for yourself, you are now a business. When you grow into a business, more people are going to learn about you. When you develop a business, check this out. People like to learn about your business. Why? Because when you, as you are doing business, okay, business is such a understood language. When you are putting yourself out there, when you go out and speak to strangers, when you go out there and sell a water bottle, when you go out there and sell a t-shirt, when you go out there and sell anything, if you're selling anything, you are in business. Here's the deeper one. If you have a 9-to-5, if you have a job, you are in a business. Why? Because when you go to work, you go to work for some money, or you go to work for someone, which is not a problem at all. In addition to that, as you go to work, you're going to work for money. In other words, you're going to work on the business. When you work on the business, you get paid for your efforts. You get paid for your support. You get paid for your time. Everything operates as a business. Hold on. Everything operates as a business. Non-profits even is a business. I learned this a long time ago. I'm like, wait, how's it a business? Like, I'm not understanding. Like, ain't it non-profit? Yeah, it's non-profit, but at the end of the day, they have to work with customers. They have to work with people. They have to support different causes. But it's okay, I need to change my content around, because I really would just want to inform others of what business that they are in. I was talking to my mentor, and a couple of my mentors, and it was like, well, you're in the people business. It doesn't matter the type of business that you're doing. What matters is that you're in business, doing business with people. And let's just say my wife and I, if we go out and travel, okay, we go out and stay at a hotel, and then we go out and get a car, and then we go out and eat. Everything that we are doing is a form of business. The hotel costs, the Uber costs, the food costs. What's costing? It costs time, and it costs money. It costs time, and it costs money. Everything is a business. So understanding that, I start to see things differently. I'm like, man, hold on. These signs that's on the side of the road, I didn't think that was a business. I just thought it was like random companies just doing it. But I didn't know that they had to pay to get themselves out there. Hold on. When you pay to get exposure, you are paying for the business. The more people learn about you, the more people observe what you're doing, the more people identify the business that you are in, the more people will come into your space, will come into your world. Why is that important? It's important because when you understand that everything is a business, everything starts to make sense, because everything is a form of payment. What's the payout that I'm doing? Well, I'm in the beginning phase of building my media business. I'm teaching about the exposure and the importance behind it, because we help leaders gain exposure, share their story, and attract the right customers. Well, how do I do that if I'm not putting myself out there? I'm not looking for the instant success. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for the success is going to come if I continue to do. If I focus on helping leaders gain exposure, share their story, and attract the right customers, I'm in the right business because I'm in the people business. And hold on. Let me go ahead and share my screen right quick. Hold on. If you got your pen, if you got your notebook, get that out and tell right, because it's so much information that's out there that a lot of people ain't talking about. Hold on. People business consists of, hold on. Now I gotta rewrite it. Hold on. Now, see, I'm getting to it. I'm getting started. For those of you who are on TikTok, if you want to join the YouTube live or the live just to see what I'm writing, shoot me a message in the chat, and I'll send it to you so that way you can have it as well. So, in the business, you gotta, what did I put? Oh, you're in the people business, which means that even if you sell a car, even if you cook a meal, this right here is a meal. Even if you travel, I don't know how to drive a plane. Hold on. Yes, I do. Hold on. Yeah. Travel. I'm not an artist. Even if you do all these different things, you're in the people business. What that means, into your business. What that consists of is that there's money that's been transferred for a product and or service. And my biggest challenge when I first started half a decade ago was just understanding that everything is a business. When I start to see all these content creators like go and create a large following for themselves, I start to see it and I'm like, man, what are they doing that's so different? Like, man, they really put themselves out there. I didn't recognize that they are a business. Yes, some majority of content creators don't make a lot of money from that. However, the ones who make money from it understands the business that they are in. It took me a half a decade to understand the business that I'm in. And so now we're evolving, we're upgrading, we're improving the content to talk about business. Why? Because everything is a business. And what I also noticed is that a lot of people are not really talking about business. They are talking about what's trending. What's trending is very important because it keeps you on top of mind, keeps you up there. Nonetheless, as I start seeing people talk about things that were trending, I'm thinking to myself, well, how does this help your business? I don't understand how it's helping you if you're talking about random things that have nothing to do with what your business consists of. Now I get it, you can talk about the trending thing, but if you tie it into your business, then it's like, well, you're taking a trend and that's a skill that you can develop over time. This skill I'm developing. But it's like, well, why talk about things if it don't help your business? And it's taking me, because I'm still learning. I'm still trying to understand that one question, because it's just like, well, there's a lot of things that's trending. I get it. But how does everything that's trending help your business? Well, it goes to the exposure part. The more people are out and about, the more people are seen, the more people start to connect them to things that they are probably doing. Think about the celebrities. Beyonce just became a billionaire. Her husband Jay-Z was already a billionaire. And then Rihanna, they say Rihanna is a billionaire as well. Why is that important? Because they use their fame, they use what was trending to really push a product and or service. In reality, they push the business. The business is what helped them be stable. And over time, as they became stable, more people started to learn about them. And it was just like, man, that's crazy. now that I'm like, like understanding business and understanding more about it and really about to start talking about it, teaching and educating those of you who are interested in getting into business, just like there's a process behind everything. Everyone has a journey of discovery. And when you discover the business that you want to be in, you have to always remember that you're in the people business. The people business is the business that matters the most, because regardless of what you sell, you have to communicate with people. Regardless of what you put out there, you have to communicate with people. Regardless of what you do, you have to communicate with people. And so the people business is really understanding people. If you understand people, you start to understand the business that you are in. And so it took me a long time. When I tell you a long time, I'm talking about a long time to actually figure out the business I was in, because I was interviewing leaders, I was interviewing executives, I was like talking to different people, learning their stories, learning their journey. And it's helping me because I'm learning. But then I'm like, well, what's the business around this? I get it. Like, it's exposure for them. But I'm like, well, I don't know how to make it a business. And so I start to learn how to make it a business. I start to go to different masterminds, different communities, different places to get educated, go to school for it. And when I start to understand that the people business is always growing and evolving, because people are always growing and evolving, I started to recognize that it's more than just a podcast. I started to recognize it's more than just a conversation. I started to recognize that I'm doing more than just creating content. What I'm doing is that I'm in the people's business, even though I haven't made a lot of money from it. I haven't made nothing from it. That's not the goal. The goal is to understand the business that I'm in. If I understand the business that I'm in and I reach out consistently and I go to different places where people are at, I will eventually start to get people on the podcast, start to get them to become customers, start to make revenue, and start to do different things. I was hesitant to go do that because I'm like, what business am I in? What business am I doing, and why is it important? I started to understand it's not just that I'm in business, it's that everything that I come around is a form of business, and the form of business is helping me understand how to help leaders gain exposure, share their story, and attract the right customers. Now that I understand that, the clarity that I have from that is so different, because at first it was helping leaders launch their podcast with confidence, right? So then when I go out there to the world, to the marketplace, and go speak with people, and I communicate with them and tell them about what I'm doing, it's like I'm speaking a foreign language. It's like they don't understand what I'm saying. It's like, well, I want to launch my podcast, but here's the thing that I start to notice that a lot of people want to communicating with is that, yes, they want to launch their podcast, but also it takes a lot of work to keep your podcast up and steady. So then I'm like, okay, I get it. You have to be like narrow. You have to be niche. Niche down is like really finding a smaller demographic to serve them even more. So when I got smaller, when I got like more focused, it was like, well, I'm too focused because a lot of people don't want to launch their podcast. A lot of people say they want to, but a lot of people don't. And I get it, like in business, a lot of people ain't going to do business with you. A lot of people are going to do business with you. It's just how you are positioning. However, I had to understand, maybe I'm offering the wrong thing. Maybe the thing that I'm offering is too focused. I need to like expand what I'm doing just a little bit. And in other words, I need to broaden what I'm doing. I need to change my communication. I need to change my language. It's not the fact that a lot of people want to launch a podcast. It's more so when someone launched their podcast, over 90% of podcasts stop after episode number 3. That's a lot of work that goes into launching your podcast with confidence. And so I'm like, all right, cool. Let me break it down. Let me just stay with it. Let me just create this community around podcasters who will encourage people. And then I start to do that. Then I'm looking at the numbers. Like in business, what I'm learning is that you have to look at the numbers. If it makes sense, do it. If it don't make sense, don't do it. And so I'm like, the numbers don't make sense. If I have a certain goal that I'm trying to hit, I'm going to have a lot of people in my community starting off, which is not bad. However, it's going to take time for me to get that community. So then I'm like, man, now I'm trying to figure out the business. I mean, I get it, you in the people business, but I'm like, well, how can that help me now? How can that help me right now? So I had to change my business model. I had to update what I was doing. There's a terminology in business called pivots. You have to pivot what you're doing. If you see something not working, you have to be okay with changing what you're doing. When you change what you're doing, you start to understand that you are pivoting your business. The reason why that's so important is because when you start to pivot your business, you start to put yourself out there even more. You start to get connected with people who are interested in your business. What you say matters even more because it has to connect with people. You're in a business of people because it has to connect with others. When I start to understand the importance of connecting with others became my focus, because if I connect with more people, I'm in a good business. I'm getting a good people business. And it taught me, if I change the content that I'm producing, if I focus on business and help leaders gain exposure, share their story, and attract the right customers, I will eventually be able to stand out. Not overnight, but if I continue to do the same thing and improve the way I'm doing it, there's a natural growth that just naturally happens. It's kind of shout out not to my twin brother Tim, but to my brother Tim. So it's kind of like this, right? Hold on. Let me get my market out. Hold on. It's kind of like this. So you got a seed, right? This right here is called a seed. And it's planted in this big old pot. This right here is called a pot. And this seed gets planted. So now the seed is in the pot. Before you see anything comes up, the roots has to start growing. This right here called the roots. In other words, foundation. And as the roots is growing and it gets strong underneath, then this one little leaf starts to poke out the pot. And what that is called growth. Because here's what happened, is that just because you plant the seed doesn't mean that the seed is going to be the tree by tomorrow. What it means is that when you plant the seed, you have to give it time to grow. When you plant the seed, you have to give it time to nurture. And when you plant the seed, you have to be okay with planting your business. Why is that important? Because when you understand that you're in a people business, being in a people business will position you differently. It's position you differently because it takes time to understand the business that you're in. And as you understand the business that you are in, you start to grow, you start to evolve, you start to improve. But when you grow into your business, you are growing into the problem that you're solving. The problem that you're solving only comes from the seed that you have planted, because it starts to change, it starts to grow, it starts to improve, it starts to evolve. But when you start to see that seed that was first planted, it wasn't always a tree. It wasn't always a business. It wasn't always something that you can naturally just go to. In fact, it was something that you had to give time to develop. For your business, everything is a business, but before everything became a business, it had to start with something. It had to start at some point. It had to start underneath the ground. It had to start trying to figure it out. As a business owner, leader, and an entrepreneur, you have to give yourself time to figure it out. Because the more you figure out, the more you learn. Hold on. Let me know in the comments that you say, hold on. The more you figure out, the more you become, because there's something in business that you don't understand. Exposure starts with your first post. Your exposure starts with your first speech. Your exposure can come in different forms, a different way. But to gain exposure, you have to be willing to take that risk. Being in business is risky. But that doesn't mean you can't become successful if you don't take risks for your business. You have to be the one to take that risk. You have to be the one to plant that seed. You have to be the one to be patient enough for your business to even grow and establish. The reason why I'm pivoting my content, the reason why I'm updating my content is because I understand, well, if I enjoy business and I enjoy learning about business and I enjoy doing business, how about I talk about the business that I'm doing? How about I make it simple for leaders and entrepreneurs who want to get into business? How about I make it easier to understand? Now, I'm not saying I'm not people who's been in the business 20 plus years, but everyone starts at some point. And everything that I'm talking about, I actually had to figure out like how to do it, how to go about doing. Like, I'm not afraid to take that risk. That risk is going to come from you planting that seed. Hold on. Let me come back to the drawing. That risk, come back to the seed. Planting seed equals taking the risk. Hold on. Let me come back to it. Seed equals where it go? There we go. Taking risk. So, and I tell you that risk, hold on. Dang. Of course. Taking. God, dog. Hold on. I can't see what I wrote. C equals taking. There we go. Taking the risk. And that's important. Taking risk for your business is so important because you're never going to get to point A to point B if you never take that leap of faith. Like, you have to be okay with not knowing everything, because eventually when you start to understand everything will start to make sense because you start to take that risk. You start to take that risk, and it gives you the information to go ask for help, to go ask for guidance, to go seek a mentor. Because one thing that stops a lot of business owners from succeeding is that they think they have everything figured out. I thought for half a decade I had everything figured out. But then when I started learning about it and breaking it down and going to people who's already doing business, it taught me, well, if I want to do business, first I have to take that leap of faith. I have to be the one to start. I have to be the one to go. I have to be the one to learn. I have to be the one that trying to discover. Because when I'm the one that's starting, I have to be okay with coming across people who has been starting for a long time. Because it's in the world business, or being in the people business, everyone starts at a different path, a different journey, a different time. And what I had to learn recently is not to compare myself. If I'm going to be in business, I have to be in business for something that I enjoy doing. And I recently discovered, well, since I do a lot of podcasts, I do a lot of interviews, and I talk to a lot of people, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the conversations. I enjoy learning. I enjoy growing. Why? Because it gives me a sense of growth, a sense of learning. Like, I can literally grow from learning from other people. Because a lot of these conversations I'm having, a lot of people won't have with the people who are successful. A lot of people won't ask the questions. A lot of people won't even go out there and take that risk. When you take that risk, you are in the business of people, because now you got to get around others who are already doing what you would like to do. When you grow into your business, you are evolving more for yourself. And the reason why that's so important, because if you're going to be in business, you have to understand that you have to gain the exposure of people who don't know anything about you. This right here is me taking that risk to put myself out there for people to learn more about me. And then once they learn more about me, they learn how I can help leaders gain more exposure, share their story, and attract more customers. When I started to understand that I'm really growing into a business, everything that I started to do became a business. I'm more organized, I'm more structured, I'm more what is called, I have a process to follow. Like, but before you get to that point, you have to start with being unorganized. You have to start with trying. You have to start with figuring it out. To this day, I'm still figuring it out. I haven't figured it out completely, but it's like, well, every day I get closer to figuring it out. Every day I discover what I'm figuring out. Every day it's like I'm growing beyond what I could ever imagine, because it's helping me become a better business. As a business owner, you have to give yourself time to develop. Just like you plant that seed in the ground, just like Johnny Appleseed went around the world planting a whole bunch of seeds for apples. All the seeds that he planted didn't naturally come out to life. They literally start to develop over time. And then he was known as Johnny Appleseed. Why was he known as Johnny Appleseed? Because Johnny Appleseed planted a lot of seeds around the world. And then the seeds that he planted started to grow the trees with the apples on it. Johnny Appleseed planted apple seeds, but before they became apple trees, that was apple seeds. Come on. Come on. You have to give yourself time to develop your business. You have to give yourself time to learn your business. You have to give yourself time to become the business that you would like to be. I didn't even know it would be this type of business that I am today, but I'm glad I stuck with it. You have to stick with the thing, and the thing will eventually start to make sense. As I'm sticking to the media business, everything is starting to make sense. It was like, oh, wait, I've been doing business for some time, and then, like, I ain't know it's called business. I just thought it was just posted online. Well, it's more than that. And when I started to understand it's more than that, I started positioning myself differently. Come on. I started to position myself differently, because when you grow into your business, you start to understand the business that you are growing into. You're in the people business, and just because you're in the people business doesn't mean you can't always develop. Hold on. You have to be willing to pivot, because when you pivot, you grow. When you pivot, you learn. When you pivot, you get more clear. Let me tell you, I did a podcast today and talking a lot about pivoting. You have to learn how to pivot. In fact, I want to look up the definition of pivots. Like I didn't even look it up, but I'm going to, because it's important to understand. Pivot, pivot definition. The definition of pivot is the central point, pin, or shaft on which a mechanism turns. Okay. I hate when I look up words and then the definition is in the words. Can I look up too? Oh man, that's annoying. All right. A pivot is simply a central point of pin that something turns on, or the act of turning on that point. And they use the example of like basketball players pivot. That's a good example. So if you're a basketball player, you got to pivot your foot. You got to pivot direction, so that way you can protect the ball and protect the defender from getting the ball. I tell you what, when you pivot, you're protecting the change. When you pivot, you're protecting your business. When you pivot, you're protecting your growth. Why? Because you have to change direction sometimes. You have to change your format sometimes. You have to change your content sometimes in order to become the business that you are looking to establish. I recognize that just because I have a lot of interviews and the interviews go well and I learn a lot, what's the business behind that? Yes, I get it. It's a people business, but what's actually the business? And I'm literally discovering that on a daily basis. I'm like, well, this can't be the business of helping leaders understand podcasts with confidence. Okay, what about building culture through podcasting? Well, that don't even make sense. I have to be okay with adjusting and putting myself out there even more to identify what's working, what's not working, what can be improved, and what can be established. The people business is always changing. And since it's always changing, I have to be the one to adapt with the change. So in this video, to recap everything that we just talked about, because we talked about a lot. I'm changing the way I'm doing my content, because I really enjoy business. Like I really enjoy talking about, learning about it, seeing what type of businesses are out there. Like there's some really creative businesses out there, but everything consists of the same thing. You have to market yourself. Market yourself is putting yourself out there. You have to sell yourself. Sell yourself is as you are speaking to people, have something to sell. Then when they purchase, you are making sales. Finances, of course, money, team and operations. Like there's so much stuff that goes into business. And I just really got fascinated with it by me learning it, me being educated, me watching different videos, watching like so many different things about it. I started to see a difference. And I was like, well, since I enjoyed learning so much about it, how about I just talk about what I've learned so far? what I'm doing and how it's helping me, then how I'm pivoting, how I got to change and what I need to be improve. And over time, something's going to come from that. Over time, I have a media company that helps leaders gain more exposure, share their story, and attract the right customers. And as I'm getting to that point, I have to start with this point today. And so I'm so happy that I'm doing this pivot, this change, this update, is because I really enjoy business. I really enjoy talking about it. I really enjoy learning. I really enjoy just everything that goes into business. And I can't wait to go to where I'm at today to the next level and be like, hey man, this is where I started and this is what you can get. And I can't wait for that moment because people gonna come into my world. They're gonna be like, man, you've been always doing this. No, I haven't. There's a journey that you got to go through, and I'm willing to talk about the journey. I'm willing to talk about the process. I'm willing to plant that seed. So in closing, so you have to grow into your business, and you have to know the business that you're in. If you do hair, if you sell cookies, if you sell anything, if you sell something to make money, or if you go to work, you're in the people business. And just because you're in the people business doesn't mean you are not in business. In fact, it means you are in the people business, and what you are doing is evolved around people. When I started to understand, I started to see the change in how I was doing business. And last thing we'll talk about is that when you plant the seed, you have to give it time to grow, to nurture, to develop. Because when you plant your seed, you're not going to know everything that you have recently learned in a day, 2. But what if you give yourself a year, 5 years, 10 years? Like I'm literally giving myself 20 years to figure this out. And then if I don't figure out 20 years, I'm going to give myself another 20 years. That's a long term. I give you a short-term goal. I have a 5-year goal, 10-year goal, 15-year goal, 2-year goal, and so on and so forth. Like I'm always planning ahead. Like I want to be better. And for me to be better, I have to plan ahead. When you plant that seed today, you never know how far you're going to go a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now. You never know how far you're going to get. And when you start to plant that seed today, growth naturally starts to happen. So that's what we talked about. You have to grow into your business. Make sure you hit that follow button, hit that like button. If you are interested in learning more about business and the importance of gaining exposure for your business, hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button, and let me know your biggest takeaway from this video on why growing into your business is so important. Let me know your biggest takeaway from that. Hit that follow, hit that subscribe, and until tomorrow, I will see y'all next time with a better case study so that way we can go more in depth with the information that's there. What's my perspective on it? What's my opinion on it? And why does that matter for exposure? Why does that matter for businesses to gain more exposure for their business? So this has been great. This is phenomenal. As you can tell, I'm really passionate about this, and I'm getting to a point where I'm understanding everything that I'm doing, and I'm doing it on a consistent basis. So until tomorrow, make sure you follow, subscribe, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.